Hey guys, it's Candi. Welcome back. I can't believe we're making a January book review video already. I will be honest, it is January 26th. The month is not quite over, so I'm going to share with you guys the books that I have read so far, and I'm sure I'm probably going to read like one or two more books, and I'll make sure to add those to the end of this video. And I just feel like I've read 9 books so far, and if I don't share these soon, I'm going to even forget what the books are about. Being it is January, I kind of wanted to just do a little like recap of 2022 reading goals, and then just share with you guys what my goals are for 2023. Mainly just the amount of books that I read. I'm reading now more than I ever have in my entire life. I have never read this many books in a year. Just to give you an example, in 2020, I read 22 books. In 2021, I read 42 books. In 2022, I read 93 books. Now, 6 of those I did not finish, so technically I read 87 books. That's still a lot of books. That's like a book and a half per week, let's call it. Some people, it takes them a month to read a book. Then again, on the other hand, there's some people that read 150 to 200 books in a year. So for this year, I made my goal to read 100 books. I feel like that's 8-ish books a month. That is 2 books per week. I feel like that's pretty obtainable. If I don't make the goal, no big deal. So just wanted to share that with you. If you want to follow me on Goodreads, it's Our Family Nest, or the link is down below in the description. And I also share all my kind of like book content on Instagram, Our Family Nest. When I finish a book, I post it on my story with my rating and a little like my opinion on the book and whatnot, if you're into that. So the first book that I read in 2023 was Shatter Me. I thought, fresh year, new start, what a perfect time to jump into a new series. So book 1, this one was published back in 2011. So this young adult series has been around for a while. It is a dystopian series, so it's kind of like Hunger Games, Divergent, even Twilight, if you want to consider, well, that's not really dystopian. It's kind of got like a fantasy, unreal feel to it, but mostly dystopian. Juliet, she's got this deadly weapon where when she touches people, instead of it turning to gold, she destroys it. She can kill people with her touch. So you have this group of people, they're kind of like the bad guys, called the Reestablishment. They have her locked away in this dungeon cell, jail cell, whatever, and they're studying her every move while they plan to figure out how they're going to use her as a weapon. In the meantime, she's reunited with Adam, this boy from her past. He's going to become an ally. And then she also meets Warner, a guy who's part of the Reestablishment, and I can see a little love triangle coming up here in the future. But it's really good. I gave it a 4.5. I will say about halfway through, there's about 100 pages that I was bored out of my mind. I didn't understand where the story was going. I posted about it on my Instagram and everybody was like, keep reading. It gets so good. There wasn't one person that told me, yeah, it's boring, quit reading. Everybody said, keep reading. And I'm so glad I did, because I gave it the 4.5. Like I said, if it wasn't for those boring 100 pages, I would have given it 5 stars. So after I read that, I went ahead and read Destroy Me, which is a novella. It's considered book 1.5 of the Shatter Me series. You don't really learn a whole lot more in this book. You learn a little bit more about Warner, the enemy of the Reestablishment that is convinced that Juliet is going to be the answer to everything. I find that he's in love with her, he's intrigued with her, he just wants to be with her, he wants to control her. And basically in this novella, you just get an inside look of what his life is like, his relationship with his father. You actually develop a little bit of feelings for him, where in Shatter Me, you just like hate him completely. But this gets you to create a little bit of soft spot for him, because you see why he is the way that he is. He's not a good guy, but is he? I don't know. It's confusing. All right, guys, so here's the deal. The next 6 books that I read were all Colleen Hoover. I had read Hopeless at the end of 2022, so I read rest of the Hopeless series, which is Losing Hope, Finding Cinderella, All Your Perfects, and Finding Perfect. I don't really want to get into the details of all of these books because literally, if you have interest in reading any of Colleen Hoover books, I'm going to link down below that video. I talk about all of these and share my rating and everything, and I just feel like I don't want to be repetitive so close back to back. Like if this was a year later, fine, but I literally just posted that video 2 weeks ago. So if you want to check it out, do that. So I'm just going to briefly talk about each of these books. So I had read Regretting You, and I gave this one a 4.5 because I wasn't like totally loving it until I got to the very last chapter, and it was probably one of the best final chapters I ever read. So I changed my rating to a 5. I actually read the last chapter twice. It was so, I don't know, I just absolutely loved it. It just melted my heart. I would literally read that book again just so I could read the ending. Then I read the second book in the Hopeless series. I gave this one a 4. This one is basically the same book as Hopeless, just written from the male character's point of view. Next up is Finding Cinderella. I gave this one a 5. And I really love this book. This one, you get to know one of the like secondary male characters. It's like his story. He's the primary character, and I just love, his name's Daniel. I'm in love with Daniel. I'm gonna miss Daniel so much. Next in the series is All Your Perfects. Like this is the order you should read them in, okay? So All Your Perfects is a completely different story with none of the same characters as any of the other books as Hopeless. And you're like, why am I reading this? Doesn't make any sense. I liked this book. I didn't love it. It goes back and forth between present and past, and I just found it very predictable, so I was a little bit bored. Then when you get to the final book, Finding Perfect, I rated this one a 5. This brings all the characters together in one story, wraps it all up with a red bow on top, and it just makes you love the whole entire series that much more. The fact that this book was written, like this was so needed. So needed. All Your Perfects could be a standalone book all by itself. Hopeless and Losing Hope could be 2 books all by themselves. But if you want to commit to the series, read them in the order that I shared them. Read this one last, and you're just, I think I cried through most of this book. And then Finding Merit, again by Colleen Hoover. I rated this one a 4.5. It's a little bit different. I felt it had a different kind of feel to it than most of Colleen Hoover's books. It didn't really strike me as like a romance book. It's nothing like November 9 or Confess or Reminders of Him. This is a really troubling family. The main characters dealing with a lot of depression. A really heavy book. It definitely kept my interest, and I enjoyed reading something a little bit different than the typical Colleen Hoover book. So then I definitely wanted to change things up again, so I picked out a thriller. I read What Lies in the Woods by Kate Ellis Marshall. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and the only reason why is I feel like so many thriller books, they start out so strong, they throw out the hook, they hook you, and then you just feel like you're dragging along and you're like, what is happening? I'm getting bored. Do I want to finish this? I start thinking about all the other books that I would rather be reading instead, but I stuck with it, and we got to the end. Even though some of it was a little predictable and I did figure most of it out, it was actually pretty good. So it's basically about these 3 girls. They keep performing this like little game in the woods called the Goddess Game. They're 11 years old, okay? So none of it really makes sense. Like, what is this game that they're playing? It's kind of just made up. It ends up one of the girls is brutally attacked. So when these 3 girls come out of the woods, one of them's literally like stabbed multiple times. The other 2 are just covered in blood. No one knows what's going on. It ends up that the girls tell their parents, the media, cops, everybody involved, that in the lineup, yes, this is the guy that's guilty, and he goes to jail. So the girls are basically considered heroes. Well, 22 years later, the girls are like, finally to the point, you know what? I think it's about time we tell the truth. There's many little holes in their story, and not all of them really want to come forward and tell the truth, but they decide that it's time. So then all the stuff starts happening, and some of the lies are even bigger lies than they even realized. puts the main character in a pretty dangerous situation. And basically she gets herself in this mess where you're like, everybody should have just kept their mouth shut at this point. But it's good. I would definitely read other books from this author. Like, I like the way the book was written. Hey guys, so I'm back. I just want to share the last 2 books that I read in January. I actually just finished this one last night and the night before finished this one. This is book 2, Unravel Me. And I gave this one 4 stars. This particular book, you really start to develop more feelings about the other male character in this book and the chemistry between Juliet, the main female character, and kind of like the bad guy. Like, there's the good guy that's Adam and the bad guy Warner. And you're supposed to hate Warner, clearly. Like, that's the goal, I think. I'm torn. I don't know who Juliet should like after reading this one. It was really good. I read this pretty quickly. So then you go back to the novella, and Fracture Me is book 2.5. So I was like, oh, it's super short. I think it's barely 100 pages. This one was from Adam's point of view. So the first novella was from Warner's point of view, and that's when you sort of maybe started feeling for this guy a little bit because his dad is just such a horrible person. Well, this time it's from Adam's point of view, and now I'm mad at Adam. Now I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you? He's so rude. I want to say selfish, but I don't know if that's really the right word. I just know that what he did to Juliet, like at the very end of the novella, she would have never, ever done to him. And maybe she will. Maybe she's gonna end up paying him back because he sort of deserves it. I only gave it 2 stars though, because honestly, I could have went without reading it. It really, other than making me be a little bit more, I was kind of like 50-50 in the middle between Adam and Warner. Now I'm a little bit more team Warner because Adam just really blew it for me. So are those feelings necessary going into book 3, which will be Ignite Me? I have no idea. I'm probably not going to be reading this one for a while. I don't think I'll forget anything, and I'm not really dying to read it either, if that tells you anything about the series. You guys will have to comment down below if you've read the Shatter Me series. Plus, I posted on my Instagram, when you read a series, here's another question for you guys. When you read a series, do you like to read it all at once and just consume the books back to back, or do you sort of like to space them out? I prefer spacing them out, unless they're like so good. That wraps up all the books that I read in January. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to thumbs it up. And then I'm curious, like, you know, when people make their thumbnails for these like reading recaps, do you like people to show you the books, or do you like to go into it blindly and not know what they read that month? Does it influence your decision whether or not to watch the video? Give me feedback below. I feel like I'm still really new to this booktube thing, and I could use some tips or advice on what gets you to click on the video. Thanks guys, we'll see you next time.